Before we get started, I hope everybody is doing well. So far, we've had people watch from literally all over the world. So don't hesitate to say hi to us in the comments and let us know where you're watching from, because we really appreciate it. And on a similar note, if you see this live in your feed, then you probably see as well a share button on the bottom right of your screen. And we would be really happy if you could push that button and share it, because then other people see that you're watching and they can tune in as well. Now, that's it for me in terms of practical things. Barry and I will be talking today about collaboration in the workplace, and more in particular, 6 keys to make that collaboration effective. Now, I think this is a super interesting topic, especially right now, with many of us still working remotely and perhaps continuing to do so for the foreseeable future. And this, of course, raises all kinds of new questions and challenges as well in terms of how to make that collaboration as successful as possible. So that will be our topic for today. Barry and I will be having a chat about that for the next 20 minutes or so. And then we'll have 10 minutes by the end of this episode where we will be able to answer as many of your questions as possible. So if you have any questions or feedback or thoughts, do share them with us in the comments during this live. Now, let me properly introduce Mr. Barry Flack to you, because he has quite an impressive resume. So, Barry is a seasoned global HR leader and strategist, and he is an expert in HR technology and digital transformation. He's had various roles such as a board member, HRD level, head of talent, head of recruitment, head of IR, OD, and I'm sure I'm now forgetting a few heads. And last but certainly not least, Barry is also one of our awesome instructors here at the AIHR Academy for our digital HR certificate program. I think that covers it pretty much, Barry. Does it?
It does indeed. I glowed as you were summarizing. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, I think we're best just to get started, right?
Sounds good to me.
Fantastic. Now, Barry, of course, I think most of us, when we think about workplace collaboration, it's not hard to see that this is important or why it is important. But can you perhaps share a few figures with us that basically show the importance even more of an effective workplace collaboration?
Yeah, look, thanks for the intro. Look, you're absolutely right. We are massively focused on collaboration in terms of the pandemic. And I hope everyone's safe and well out there that's listening in. But look, I just wanted in your answer to give a bit of context. And, this issue of importance of collaboration, it's spoken about a lot, highly misunderstood. And actually, it's been a challenge for us to effectively deploy for probably about 4 decades now. What I mean by that, I mean, put simply, that for a lot of our parents and grandparents' generation, there was a much simpler life. There was a much simpler view that efficiency, command and control, mass customization delivered our organizations. Complexity entered around the end of the 20th century. And the ingredients for success since then, really, has been very much about ideation. It's about innovation. It's about organizations that adapt and readapt by physically getting good, talented individuals together to help them, re-energize as a business. So, look, our importance in there has been going for some time now. Our nemesis, as we progressed over the last few years around this, has been the specter of command and control. Where we have far, far too many organizations still tied to that level of addiction. But we know that in terms of anything that we see out there by way of figures, by measurement, is very much about the innovation angle, that collaborating as peers, bring together on that. The ideas that they bring to the table are absolutely paramount in the success of organizations today.
All right, so that's where we see real added value, or even more added value, that when it comes to the innovative power, perhaps, so to speak,
Correct.
of organizations. Okay, thank you. When we turn to HR then, and the role that HR plays in that, so what role does HR play in a highly effective organizations? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, look, there's in your introduction, everyone's getting a sense. I've been around for a while. Look, the answer to this question, I think, is a bit of a continuum. To be perfectly honest, all of us at some point have seen the lowest level of allowed collaboration, which is usually that annual jolly that those who run the organizations allow us to partake in, where our team event allows us to have a multifunctional team sorting a bridge that we cross, where we end up solving a particular problem. I've found over the years that there is also an alliance to look at the communication problems in large, global, complex organizations. But ultimately, as HR professionals, we got to recognize that those sort of one dose in the arm that we get each year does not make a collaborative organization. For us, and in our conversation here, I loathe to make things simple. But if we're going to enter the whole issue of collaboration inside organizations, and we should put up our first slide here, Hayley, which, for me, is actually a bit of a gate. Yeah, a bit of a gate for absolutely every HR professional out there who wants to do the right thing in their organization. So what you've got there is something I use in talks, writing, and sitting around with my kids. And I'm obsessed at spreading this as widely as possible, is the issue of Theory X, Theory Y. It's 70 years old. And in being 70 years old, it's still pertinent. What happened back then with Douglas McGregor is he posed the question that do we follow the theory of organizations populated by Theory X individuals, the assumptions that employees dislike work, lazy, and that they need inspired, they need the stick, they need the carrot, they need lots of motivation in terms of doing the work? Or do we have more likely the Theory Y assumption? Now, look, put it simply, because I could spend 40 minutes on this. Theory X has, frankly, absolutely no scientific basis. We have created a lazy trope that as a HR function, we got to look after people who are, frankly, demotivated and don't want to do good things. So let us declutter our organization and declutter our thinking in the first instance to recognize that success today is about bringing together incredibly talented people who are already motivated. All we can do in that environment is make them less motivated. Yeah. So, straight away in terms of HR, go in and use the organization and template you have and cleanse it to death. Yep, get rid of the stuff that has flowed from Theory X, the individual as king, the leader as the all-knowing supremacy who, frankly, trickles down information, the planning, that goes into so much of the work that we do. If you are responsible for putting together organizational charts, then, frankly, burn them in the garden. They are worthless. Yeah, so put simply, before we go into the technical, the 6 elements, all the great stuff in the detail, if you do not put people at the center of absolutely all of your thinking, none of this collaboration piece will work. Yep. So first and foremost, absolutely on that. And then we can go into the continuum. Yeah. You can go in with bite size. Yep. You've got lots of organizations out there who on a frequency basis are doing good things, but not well enough and not frequent enough. You've got organizations who on an annual basis recognize that multifunctional teams allow an innovation theme. Yeah, there are businesses. I've worked with a business that's part of the Robert Half empire in London, and the role that they play each year is to come up with a competition based on ideas. Yeah, based on innovation, based on rules around doing that. They create a ritual that lasts for several days. Invested by the organization as a part of their own DNA. We can kick those things off. HR teams, you can then step into the evolving skill set. So you've got rid of all of that admin stuff to the automated computer. You've got rid of all of that other stuff that makes no use to people. and you can sponsor hackathons. You can develop design workshops with the product teams. Yep, you can create employee journeys and increase the effectiveness of onboarding, recruitment, etc.
Yes.
There are a whole series of new world techniques that our HR people need to master. You get the time and the space to do that. And that, to me, is about collaboration.
Yes, definitely. And I think that the things that you mentioned as well, so organize, for example, hackathons to stimulate collaboration as well. I think that they go very well also with Theory Y that we see here in your image, right?
Absolutely. Yep. So look, that is a real leaning in to recognize both the mastery, the assumption that people want to provide ideas. They're motivated to do so. They do not need an enormous amount of push down the organization to come together for the good of that business. And I'm not a massive fan, and I'm slightly left of field on this around purpose. I think the purpose ultimately is about how we serve the client. I know lots of organizations labor and focus on a higher purpose than that, and that's okay. I think people can come together and look. Ultimately, what we've got to understand in today's, and I use the word sense making on this, Nelly, and I think it's going to become more of an issue in collaboration. The world that we have on complexity, we don't understand. Yep, just look where we are. Look how utterly surprised we wake up each day to a world of masks and the world of remote working, and everything is turned upside down. Nobody predicted it.
No,
and the
definitely.
sooner we embrace the fact that complexity of the market, of our society, and ultimately people, then we can design around the full effectiveness of a lot of good people working together on these things.
Yes. I think that is definitely a great answer to that question that I had. And then I had a follow-up question, which you already pretty much answered as well, because I was going to ask you for some examples that you have come across to boost that collaboration. But perhaps what we could do instead is you can maybe give us some pitfalls or things that HR needs to really keep in mind when it comes to initiatives to stimulate an effective collaboration. What have you come across?
Yeah, look, if we are at the stage of, that sort of incremental progression, then look, we are going to need to create a system. And a system for me is the organization we operate within. I use system where people use culture. Yep. So if we are going in to an environment where the natural feel safe is for blame, is for silo, is for, uttering the sorts of phrases like, well, look, sales are the sort of people who oversell the product. Yeah, the IT function are the sorts of people who ultimately, don't understand the pressure we're up against. HR intervenes where, frankly, I don't need that level of solution. So we cannot let people operate in a world of schizophrenia. Yep. So outside of the collaborative workshops, the environments, you've got to build on a culture of trust, a culture where psychological safety is the sort of thing that's important, where you are bringing people together, where you're actively boosting the frequency of thanking people across the organization, of creating networks, relationships. You are tirelessly, if I can use my fingers, working the system that way to connect the nodes inside your business as much as possible. It's hard. And one of the misconceptions of collaboration is that it happens instinctively. It doesn't. Yep. You've got to be very conscious about your collaboration. So the biggest spectrum we haven't spoken about are, the organizations who've gone all in. Yeah. So your context is different. But if you want to look at organizations who have done the decentralized collaborative piece for many a year, go read up on W.L. Gore. Go look at Handelsbanken. Go look at Buurtzorg. Look at those organizations and understand what they do. If you are a little bit more modern and a bit more of a hipster, go after Spotify. Look at Zappos. Understand the tribes. Understand, the squads. Put together a sense that there is an obsessive desire to make sure that people understand all the way through it that the team, the collaboration, the collective brain power and talent of people is what drives it at most. Yep. So HR people, watch out for the kinks in your organization and in your system that send schizophrenic messages. Don't hold collaboration up on a pedestal and pay people on individual reward. Don't get obsessed in planning and think collaboration works.
Yeah, so if I can resume, picking up from your answer, Barry, I think it's don't also generalize groups of people, as in don't stereotype. So do not think that everybody from IT thinks this or that, and the same thing goes for salespeople. And then something else is do not think that collaboration will necessarily happen spontaneously. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely, without a doubt. Yep.
And so another thing you mentioned is like organizations that have gone all in, and then you mentioned organizations that are working fully distributed, right? So for you then, organizations that work on a fully distributed basis, they tend to have the whole collaboration, effective collaboration thing really well implemented.
Yes.
Is that what I can,
Yeah, look, it is. If you think of it, it's about surrounding individuals in every aspect of their daily working life is geared towards a common business problem. That common business problem tends to be the local client and their needs. So they aren't the type of people who wait for permission that goes up the organization and comes back down again. The organization serves them centrally. So they have a series of guidelines. They got a framework to operate within, which is usually around what the client needs. They have decluttered their organization. They're very obsessed with mastery. So here's another thing that I want HR people to be absolutely aware about. There's a niceness to collaboration.
Yes, we're gonna be speaking about that. Yeah,
absolutely. But look, the mastery element of it means you go in and you know what you're doing. Yet you contribute based on the fact that you are not just a carried person in there. So there's a very serious element to these organizations. Their relative targeting is a constant focus on improvement rather than the internal competition that you get around lots of organizations. So avoid the toxic behaviors, and as HR people, look and see what reinforces collaboration at all times.
Yes. And I think what's actually very interesting about this example of distributed organizations, it illustrates very well that collaboration does not necessarily happen spontaneously, because if you're distributed, if everybody is working from another location, physically speaking, then of course, if you want to collaborate, that already implies that it requires some effort from people. Right?
Absolutely.
And yet they do indeed have successful collaboration examples, most of these organizations. So I found it an interesting example, Barry. Okay. So this brings me to the part of our talk today that I'm super excited about, because this is and it's kindness. Now, Barry, I've seen you, I think, on LinkedIn several times speak about kindness and the importance of kindness today. Well, basically, what is indeed, I think, the importance of kindness in the workplace, although perhaps most people will have a bit of an image that goes with that. But also, the second question then would be, why is kindness so important for successful collaboration? So,
look, you're absolutely right. So for people like myself, once again, my veteran status, look, we have operated for many a year where in the boardroom, hard technical skills have been overly obsessed upon. And the issues such as kindness have been seen as soft and otherwise. And so we've got a wonderful, and we could and should spend another day on this, around diversity, around business schools who've driven MBAs based on the Wolf of Wall Street and the overly machismo that exists around too many organizations. So HR people, we've won the cultural war. We've understood that there is a true and obvious benefit of having something like kindness inside our organization. And it's a difference from niceness. Yep, niceness can be gamed. Kindness are acts. Yep. So
I like that one. We should make a quote out of that. Niceness can be gamed, and kindness are acts.
Yeah. Kindness, I can't get away with it. It's an outcome. That was kind. Yeah. And that's important. And we've come to realize that if we're in that collaborative state, and we are about individuals that are working together, that neuroscience that exists that literally gives off the serotonin inside individuals' heads are the sorts of things that gives us energized workplaces. Yeah, that gives people self-esteem, that allows individuals to really buy into it. We used to put too much faith on the old, the bonus, the car, the big office, the title. So we're growing up and we're learning, from a psychological point of view, that what makes people tick, frankly, are the sorts of things that are about our humanity. Yep, humane organizations. So, it's great that we, in the pandemic, very much have dialed up a clear sense of our dependency and our interdependency around each other. And we've seen some wonderful examples of that. But there is a very clear and obvious business case that says that we do not have that acid trust in each other and that kindness. And collaboration itself is very focused on kindness at its heart, the empathetic elements of it. If you think about it, it's about me and you working together, but you actively listening and understanding my worldview and me listening to yours. I have to be present. I have to understand it. I have to compromise. I have to come up with a solution that is ultimately as wide and deep as we can make it. Because I think I've mentioned it, sense making this mad world that exists today is the biggest skill that we in organizations need to embrace. And we do it by collaborating with each other.
Yes. Wow, Barry. Yeah, I think that is beautifully put. And I think it's very true as well. And I really, again, I very much like the fact that kindness is about acts. And I think also that when we talk about collaboration, yes, you are very true when you say, I need to actively listen to you and vice versa, because otherwise, what's the point? And I think also when we are collaborating, it also sometimes means that I will perhaps doing certain tasks because you are too busy, and vice versa as well. So I think we can definitely, and probably there's many more examples of these acts of kindness when people collaborate. So yeah, I think it's very powerful.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So that brings me then to our other factors, because of course we said today that we would have 6 keys to an effective collaboration in the workplace. I very much like to put the kindness on the first place, but then we're having 5 more, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
so I would say go for it.
Yeah, look, let's start listing them. Yeah, look, so I think elsewhere we bring into this is about positivity. Yeah, so look, once again, very much linked to the mindset that we bring into these things. We are no shortage of problems. Yeah, and collaboration means that we're going to have a hell of a lot of setbacks. So stepping into the collaborative mindset positively is absolutely key. Yeah.
Yeah.
Trust, we've certainly talked about. I think that comes in 2 dimensions, Nelly. It's very much about my capability, your capability. Collaboration falls over if people get carried. I've done that. I've seen it. It becomes toxic. The other side of it has got to be the emotional intelligence, something we've massively underestimated down the years, that allows you and I to continue working and having the tough conversations. Yeah. And that's a very understated skill set that far too many of our executives do not have. But that ability safely for you to put everything out on the table, for you to question, for you to say that is not the lens we should be going to oppose, etc. Look, empathy, we've talked about, it's in the element of kindness. So, let's not labor too much on it. But empathy is very much about experience from the employee, from the client, is absolutely central to winning any particular, commercial imperative that we have these days. Look, then we're starting to talk about the sorts of things from a success perspective is efficiency. Now, what I mean by efficiency in this sense is not so much the agenda item, but the idea that we put some rigor around the process of collaboration. Yeah. So people will know that the very best organizations have got principles that underpin the way they work and in collaboration. They time box, very clearly as taken from, the agile movement in IT, etc. Where they're very much driving decision making rather than pontificating, for it to be informed. But so efficiency in how we do it and how we carry it through and are disciplined about it is a very clear and obvious key, to success around that. Clarity of purpose, look, I've sort of touched upon it. A lot of organizations are very key that it is linked to the social purpose of the business. We remember why we're here, whether you're an IT, product, HR, otherwise. We have an overarching view of what joins us rather than the siloed piece of around, belonging is a big 21st century issue for us. In and around all of that. And look, the accountability piece, the final part of that particular key, is the delivery of that. So collaboration can look fun. Collaboration can look slightly, blurred around the edges. It's a serious business activity. And the accountability is about our handoffs, our ability to do stuff for each other on this and on behalf of the organization itself.
Yes, because ultimately, I imagine the goal is still, of course, to that the collaboration leads also to the business achieving its business goals, right?
Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt.
All right, so let me then see if I can summarize those 5 other factors. Of course, we had the kindness, but then we had the trust. I think a very, very important one indeed. We had also the emotional intelligence that you mentioned. We have some kind of structure that is needed. And now you need to help me, Barry, because I'm missing 2 now that you just mentioned.
So we have the accountability.
Yes, the accountability. Then I have one more. And then, of course, we have the purpose or the belonging.
Correct. That's an element of clarity in that. So it's nice to get together. You're absolutely right in the way you've described it, Nelly. We're there to do a bit of business.
Yes, definitely. Now, I think the emotional intelligence one is interesting as well, because that's not something I think everybody has naturally, and definitely not to the same extent.
No, look, it's, in our HR audience looking in, if I could make a plea, if you've got your arms around any recruitment activity, for goodness sake, dial down the technical capability. We're going to outsource that and automate it, and dial up emotional intelligence. That plus diversity, and I'm going to speak very obviously and passionately as a father of 2 beautiful young daughters. Please put more women in leadership positions. They do it better than us males. For the good of the organization. There is just the ability in this strange world that we operate within, that the old machismo, the old nonsense that we are seeing in far too many populist governments around the planet, have no part in an organization that frankly does not know its future. So emotional intelligence, hire for it, develop it, reward it, put it on a pedestal, and stop having debates around the technical hard skills because they're going to the automated computer.
Okay, now I'm going to go to our audience for 1 second because I see that you are asking questions already, which is fantastic. I have one more question from me to Barry, and then we're gonna get to your questions. So if in the meantime there's anything that pops up, please share that with us in the comments, and then we'll get to them after my next question. So Barry, the last question that I have, and I think this is an interesting one, because especially if we talk about people working remotely or perhaps even fully distributed organizations, and your experience with HR tech. So my last question is actually, how can HR professionals use technology to improve collaboration and perhaps to create the best possible environment for an effective collaboration?
Brilliant. Yeah, look, great question. We know we have a slide coming up in a second. Look, throughout my particular career in HR, we have embraced automating, our processes. Throughout that time, I've seen us go from intranets. I've seen us use email. Email, let's not forget about it, is a collaborative tool. We handed it the IT and they created evil features like CC and blind CC.
Yes.
So let's not forget that these are social, that we ultimately use here. On the slide that hopefully we're going to put up and show everybody on that.
Yeah, on a note about that slide, just to interrupt 1 second, yep. Barry, sorry. We are actually going to share that in the comments so everybody can see that because, well, that's a technical thing. Yeah, continue.
Okay, so look, having looked at that slide and embraced it, thought it was a good share. It is reflecting the fact that we've had an exponential explosion in the technology ecosystem. But what we've got to recognize that we shouldn't overconflate the technology side of things, that they are ultimately about the social side of the organization that we put in. I have worked with businesses who have introduced some leading edge collaboration tools, but who have turned those tools off because the democratic nature of them crashes up against the autocratic command and control. I have had phone calls from senior managers who've said, I can't have the most junior person in my team be awarded the expert status inside your collaboration tool. Yep. So, we have some brilliant stuff. You'll see it on the slide. You have every subcategory that exists in there. There are subcategories that don't exist. The one that excites me is ones around workplace automation, where gathering the collective strength of people's skills, background, intelligence, and some organizations that exist out there that I've worked with called Profinda, Adepto, are creating some wonderful stuff that breaks down large, complex organizations and in the flick of a button, helping you understand who the experts out there. They aren't the top of the tree. They are the peers that you work with and you don't know and you don't see. So technology, you well know I'm a lover of, but it is secondary and always will be to how we use it in that social technology space. And it is exploding. HR people, go experiment. You have a lovely list of every subcategory of collaboration that exists at the moment, and there are more. Experiment with this stuff, build it around your efforts, create ease with it, but ultimately it's about individuals, their motivations, capabilities, and competencies.
Yes. So for the people watching again, do check out that slide indeed, because it's a beautiful overview of all kinds of collaboration tools and software out there, and very nicely categorized as well. So do give it a look. Okay, Barry, we're getting to another exciting part of this live, which is the audience questions. So if you're ready, I'm gonna give you the first one. All right, so the first question, and it's one from Eduardo Caporazzo. I hope I pronounced the name right. It is, how can HR influence VPs and leaders in the organization to change the whole company culture from theory X to theory Y? Nice first question, yeah.
Thank you, Eduardo. Look, you're going to, changing the entire organization, going all in, has got so many factors based around that. Understanding what makes your business tick and acting in a very sales-oriented way to know what buttons to press is key. That might be risk, that might be competition, that might be about showing, frankly, how diminished your market share might be in a few years' time. But ultimately, it's allowing your business to start having the conversation and showing efficiency savings in the first instance around cleansing that organization. An example, Eduardo, would be take a look at the big bang for buck you get in annual appraisals. Think about timing that to the number of hours you utilize each year and talk about the time back you would get if you change that to continuous improvement. If you work with technology to allow you to capture in the moment feedback, and create a non-risked positive environment when you are giving people all the thanks, all the development at all the time. And present that into the board. Show them the hundreds of hours, the thousands of hours they win back to allocate to other stuff, and then build on that. Yeah. Change is, for me, not a big horrible road with an exit at the end. It's adding milk to coffee. You can change it in a moment.
Nice one again, Barry. Okay, we're gonna continue with the questions. They keep coming in. All right. The second question is coming from Elnara Mahmudova, and the question is: as we know, due to COVID, many employees now work from home. The question is about procrastination. How can we maintain technical skills, activity, team spirit, and the link between employees? So perhaps,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That's a great question, very pertinent. Look, this is a bit, it's almost like a bit of a sort of marriage guidance piece, I think, the start of this answer. It's, it's recognizing there's a problem. We've got a brand new problem here. It's been exacerbated. I work with a few organizations where there are, and I'm happy to share these afterwards with the group, I think a list of questions that are exposing a lot of the things that the HR person has just identified. Yeah. And in doing so, it talks about effectiveness of our organization. It talks about the honesty and the empathy that goes with really understanding how you are handling a multitude of issues, how your reliance on meetings for the sake of it, on burnout, on Zoom, on all of the things that we are all working on. And frankly, in your context, start gathering data about what it means for your organization. What's important? One of the things we haven't mentioned, and I'm sure it's a factor in the question as well on it, of course, is the physical real estate. So we're remote, physical real estate's coming back into the equation. And so we've got a question about burnout, 24 hours, the work that needs to be done, the role of the leader, the role of the physical workspace, the principles that we are required. There are loads of ways of fixing that, which are growing up, they're adult, they're recognizing the people you have are burning out. I've got caring responsibilities. I've got other worries.
Yes.
And look, let's lean into it. Let's be open and honest. Once again, not a board that thinks they have all the answers or will ignore having the conversation.
Okay, thank you. We're going to the next question. And people have definitely been listening very well. So that's always nice to see, because I have a question here about sense making, Barry. Sense making, how do we cultivate this behavior at the workplace? And it's a question from Jasbir Kaur Sadhu Singh.
That's a great question. Look, I am, the issue of sense making, I think, has entered into the organization and had a light shone on it as a result of the pandemic. Yeah. I was always the believer that we couldn't plan for the future. We're now living with this enormous case study of what it actually looks like in practice. Yeah. Sense making is what we need to repel against, which is our instinctive gathering of data and making the wrong conclusion. Yeah. Go back to theory X. Yeah. It's about people. Yeah. They're all working from home. They're all instinctively lazy. That's why our business is not performing as it is. Terribly lazy quote. We've made sense of 3 bits of data. Today is gathering as much of that as possible. We haven't talked about that importance of analytics, the psychology of your people, the mood, the sentiment, the market, your competition. There are the data points required to understand the problem before we dive into it. We've grown in the last few years, moving very quickly. Everything's about quick and speed and breaking things. That's not the era we're in. We do that, we're likely to fail, and I don't think we're mature enough to deal with that. Today is about gathering in, once again, in a collaborative environment, utilizing the brains of everybody. What will that mean? How are we making sense of, coming out and having no physical restaurants, but having a digital delivery service? Yeah. And it's thrown upon us. Each organization has a digital challenge today they didn't have a year ago.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Barry. Okay, I have a few more and then we're going to have to wrap up, of course. All right, the next question is coming from Anna. And the question is, can we use organizational network analysis to understand the structure of collaboration?
Yeah, look, I'm a big fan of organizational analysis. There's some great pieces of technology that exists out there. Look, it works on several fronts. Yeah, it works on a wonderful piece of insight about who holds some of the great relationships that exist out there, how your organization is actually in reality from a value creation point of view working together. It provides sense-making data that that you can then build upon. It shouldn't be, and we need to be careful about a world of O&A and intrusion. We haven't mentioned enough about it, but we have a health and well-being issue. We've got trust from a distance. We've got burnout. So be careful. It's great, but tell people that it's about effectively using, the data for the good of the organization, and to help them, tap into expertise that exists. Et cetera, et cetera. So it's a bit of a, once again, be open and transparent. Key parts of the collaboration principles. Be open and honest.
Yes, definitely. All right. Another question, and this one I find personally also very interesting. It's a question: are there any tips for developing teams' emotional intelligence? Now, I know that you already said earlier it starts with hiring for emotional intelligence. Sure, but I can imagine organizations perhaps having quite a lot of people in their workforce currently, and they would like to know how to develop those people's emotional intelligence. So do you have any tips?
Yeah, look, I'm a big fan of coaching. Yeah, look.
Yeah, we actually talked about that in the last episode.
Which is a terrific episode. So, as an outcome, you've got two challenges. Coaching can clearly still be seen as, a bit of a luxury product. There are coaching, and I'm sure, some of the HR folk know this, some wonderfully democratic ways of coaching large-scale organizations, which is about taking data and nudging them. So ultimately, this is, a very clear sense of having an environment that lifts the lid on the, unintended consequences of some of our actions. The maturity and insight of being able to have that. So dial up coaching. I'm a massive fan of it. If you want it at large scale, create those nudges. And the nudges you get in technology nowadays are just clear and obvious reminders that some of your people are are tipping over. Lots of your people need those thanks. It's about dealing with the complexity. But if you add up those nudges and you go with those acts of kindness with it, the reward that comes back on it, is absolutely tenfold.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yes. So for those of you who didn't get to see that last episode, I'm going to jump on the occasion. The last episode we had of AIHR Live, we talked about coaching, and we talked about also making coaching more scalable and in a way also more democratic, as you just said, Barry. So I highly recommend you watch it if you want to know more about that. All right, Barry, I'm going to do two more questions if you're okay with that.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. I have... Okay, I have here a question. We have always had a strong focus on technical capabilities. How can I sell my colleagues on the importance of, for instance, emotional intelligence?
Yeah, look, the business case for these things, I think, has been wrapped up inside what I've said over the last, 40 odd minutes, which is that we are now in a world, where the ability of individuals to work effectively together trumps, in many respects, that deep technical expertise. The ability, therefore, to raise the case that having the times 10 technical expert is of no use to man or beast if that individual cannot communicate, if that individual cannot collaborate, empathize, feedback, understand, etc., etc. The world that we operate within, and this is about belief systems. This is about going back to good old theory X and theory Y. How do I get the very best of my collective talent? They are all brilliant. They are all motivated. They are all engaged. Only I and others around me can, pull them the other way. So how can I keep this going? And that challenge is an emotionally intelligent one. Does not stop them being technically brilliant. You're going to tell them, but you've got to land on the fact that that stuff is about the collective power of your organization. That's what wins the commercial war these days.
Okay, then the last one, Barry. I think that is a good one, perhaps to end with, because we haven't necessarily talked about metrics. I have a question here. What are some of the metrics to measure effective collaborations in the organization? Do you have any metrics, perhaps, that you've seen organizations use?
Look, I mean, I'm not a massive fan of metrics per se in this instance. Yep. So, I'm not ducking the question on this. This, to me, is about outcomes. Yeah. So the idea that we are in a space, if you think of the organizations who are all in, their metrics are very much about the collective improvement as they are as an organization. So if I lose the example, read more about it, but the wonderful Handelsbanken is about customer satisfaction. Yeah, it's about turnaround times for mortgages. It's about clearance. It's about the sorts of things that ultimately matter for the organization. When it drops below the target, everybody's obsessed about the target vis-a-vis the client, not that there is somebody somewhere who is churning through an internalized looking metric. So be careful. Metrics to me strikes of internal navel gazing too much. Okay. The external targeting of being a better organization obsessively is the one that the big decentralized organizations that I've mentioned obsess about more.
All right. We still have a lot of questions, but I'm afraid that we really need to wrap up now. So Barry, I want to thank you once again. I hope you enjoyed our conversation today.
Brilliant, as always.
Okay, good. I did as well, and I learned a lot of things. So thank you very much for that. And have a nice rest of the day.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks for everybody who's dialed in. Stay safe and go. It's a wonderful time to be in HR. I hope it was been of value.
Definitely. Thank you, Barry, and bye.
Take care. Bye.
Now, from me too, thank you very much again for tuning in today to this episode of AIHR Live. If you would like to learn more about learning the latest in-demand HR skills, you might want to check out our website, which is AIHR.com. And we currently have an offer running with a 20% discount on our full Academy Access license, which means that you have access to 24 courses and 6 certificate programs. And so that you can learn basically all the latest in-demand HR skills for digital and data-driven HR. You can find everything on AIHR.com. Now, one more time for me, thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope to see you soon for another episode of AIHR Live. And until then, take care. Thank you and goodbye.